Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Hebraic Awakening. We are going to discuss holiness and what it means from an ancient Hebraic perspective. Some of us may have been taught that holiness is the opposite of sin, or that the Most High cannot bear to look upon sin or come near sin. So we need to get the correct interpretation from an ancient Hebraic perspective. So some of you may understand that holiness means to be set apart, something dedicated. That is true. However, when we dig a little bit deeper into the word, we see that holiness is more likened to something opposite of being common. All right, so let's take the Shabbat for instance. The Shabbat is set apart and dedicated. It is not common like the other days. So, because Shabbat is dedicated and set apart for something higher. There's a higher purpose for that particular day. It doesn't mean that the other days are evil or dysfunctional. All right. It means that the other days are common. You do common things on those days. By the time you get to the seventh day, the Shabbat, the Sabbath, it is set apart and dedicated for something higher. You sit with Yahweh, He gives you strategy for the week, He rejuvenates you, He heals you, He gives you wisdom, and so on. So the Shabbat is dedicated for a higher purpose. The other days of the week are common. So we know that not just people can be holy, but objects and animals. All right. So you kind of following me with holiness is something opposite from common. It's dedicated for a higher purpose. Now, Yahweh instructs us to be holy, for He is holy. So we automatically tend to think that we need to be without sin. Of course, we need to be without sin. However, being holy is a little bit more, I don't want to say complicated, that's not the right word, but it means more than just being sinless. We are human, we are going to sin. Yahweh knows we are going to sin. So He did not say, be sinless, for I am sinless. He said, be holy, for I am holy. Now, if you are not convinced that that word has nothing to do with sin, but it means to be set apart, let's take a look at Adam and Eve. So, if He is holy and He cannot draw near to sin, right? If He can't look upon sin, then Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, right? Now, the punishment for sin is that they got removed from the garden, amongst other things. But Yahweh, when they sinned, He called for them, He engaged them, He drew near to them. All right. So we're going somewhere with this. Holiness draws near, it engages. All right. It doesn't turn away from sin itself. Let's look at Hasatan. All right. He dressed himself up like an angel of light. Yahweh did not banish him out of His presence. All right. Hasatan is the epitome of sin, lawlessness, right? Dysfunctional. So, with that being said, Yahweh engaged Hasatan, all right? He drew near to listen to what he had to say. And I think we think that Yahweh, I don't know what we think. Did He turn His back? Did he put up a partition or wall, in front of Hasatan? No, He talked with him because holiness is not fragile, right? Holiness is not going to break into a million pieces because it is confronted with sin. Holiness transforms. That's the job of Yahweh saying, I'm holy, be holy. because holiness is likened to an operating room. Let's talk about that for a minute. An operating room has to be void of contamination, all right? It cannot be filled with germs and filth. The operating room is there to come up with strategy for healing. That's what it's designed to do. The operating room is to heal, right? You got to be able to have a very clean and pristine operating room, free from every type of germ. That is what holiness is. Now, with that being said, holiness is not afraid of contamination. Holiness will go to the contaminated and still remain uncontaminated. So, what is Yahweh saying to his people? How can you go to a sinful world and not be contaminated? His Torah. His Torah teaches you not to sin, all right? It teaches you how to govern yourself so you will not become contaminated by the world. When we look at Yeshua, our Mashiach, and even if you don't believe he's the Mashiach, you believe he's a prophet, that man who embodied the essence of holiness, sat with sinners, he engaged with sinners. I believe that he is the Mashiach. He is the living, breathing Torah. So Torah walked the earth to show us how this is supposed to be done. Torah governs us. It keeps us from sinning, especially on purpose. So Yeshua, in his infinite wisdom, went to the lepers, touched them. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Did he become contaminated, right? Because they touched him. The holiness that he carried transformed because he is the Torah, and the Torah heals along with holiness that is the operating room. It was the great recipe for that person to get what they needed, the operating room and the healing that take place in the operating room. Yeshua again embodied the perfect imagery of holiness, what being holy means, how to live holy on this earth. So, what am I saying? You are called to be holy, you are called to transform, right? So, you yourself should not have anything in common with a sinful world. Doesn't mean that you're perfect, right? But you're walking on the path of righteousness. You are hearing the instructions from the Most High, which is His Torah. He's telling you how to go. When you meet someone, you're discerning, right? A lot of us have gifts of words of knowledge, wisdom, insight. So all of that helps you to now bring Yahweh's transformation to the world or to that particular person, community, workplace, so on. You have to be holy because Yahweh is holy. Now, holiness does not exclude people. That's not the definition of holiness, exclusion. And that's why we need to heal. Because as we come into faith, especially understanding our Hebraic roots, honey, we think that we are like a club, an exclusive club where nobody else can get in. That's the spirit of the Pharisee and the Sadducees. Like they were the ones that kept everybody out from really getting into the kingdom through living Torah. They put up all of these fences and gates and walls around the kingdom. So you have to follow their interpretation, right, of scripture and their rituals and their traditions. And you couldn't even follow the instructions from Yahweh Himself. So you do not get to exclude people. You get to transform people by Yahweh's holiness. So you can't go to a church. Hello, somebody. That's where your family members are. You are not going to go to the church and be contaminated by what you call paganism. That's not how it works. Yeshua walked. He walked among silliness and contamination. So he's telling you that you don't become contaminated because you go to church. You don't become contaminated because you sit with Muslims. You don't become contaminated because you talk to a Buddhist. You become contaminated when you're weak and feeble minded, when you don't understand your foundation in the kingdom, when you misinterpret scripture, right? And that causes you to miss the mark. So now you sinning because you don't fully understand the instructions. You don't have wisdom. That is what causes you to sin, not talking to people who think differently than you. You are called to be holy. You are called to go transform. And so that's why I'm like, we need to rethink. Talk about I'm set apart. I'm set apart. We are set apart people. Now, if we're set apart people, when this government shut down, all right, and those food stamps stopped, then the set apart people would have been transforming their communities and their neighborhoods. They would have immediately said, oh, not on our watch, not in our neighborhood. We have food banks. We have a place where you could come and at least get a meal or two. But that didn't happen. And I know I offended one guy, you know, he was going on my post on TikTok, telling me how there are men and women out there in the streets. Yes, they are. I'm one of them. Hello. Me and my husband have been feeding people since 2009. But we could do way more as a people, as a nation. We're not talking about individuals. I'm talking about as a nation of believers. We don't do enough because we're in the food stamp line right along with everybody else, right? We the tail and we not the head. I know that's a little harsh, but it's the truth. It is the truth. And so you can't help people when you are missing the mark right along with the world, but you call yourself set apart and dedicated to a higher purpose. But your works, what you do, how you live, is opposite of what you're saying. So let's be holy. Let's be transformative. Let's bring healing. Let's connect with the people in our communities because we are holy as our Creator is holy.